Welcome to Sudzin Country. Hi, I'm Herb Sudzin. I'm very happy to say my special guest is Mr. Chet Atkins. Welcome to the show, sir.
Okay, Herb.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Chet Atkins of today. Neck and Neck is your collaboration with Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits.
That's right.
What kind of music's on this LP?
Well, it's more traditional country, I suppose. I had been doing quite a few jazz type albums for CBS because that was the only place I could get play. It was on jazz stations or on easy listen stations. Country stations do not play instrumentals anymore, and they fixed it so I couldn't even win the Instrumentalist of the Year anymore.
No kidding.
Well, to win that, you've got to have played behind the singer of a record that went #1 or something. It's like saying to be Vocalist of the Year, Reba McEntire must sing behind Anne Murray or somebody to win the award. That's how crazy it is. So anyway, I've been making that type of album, jazz and new age, and Mark Knopfler didn't like it. He said, "You got to get back to doing the traditional stuff." So it was his idea to get back and do all these nice tunes we did. There'll be some changes made, a thing I'd written as a gag that I did on television one night. He liked that, and we finished it and did several things with a more traditional country feel. Still didn't get any country play, but but it sold great all over the world.
I was just going to say, you were #1 country album in England, UK for 1990.
That's right, and Australia, it's very big there, and all the English-speaking world, I guess it's done very well, but mainly because of Mark is young and popular, and so they got him, and in doing so, they hear me too.
Well, how many? You kind of swung to some vocals on this. You never were too much for vocals before.
I've been singing quite a bit the past few years. I've got a song I sing about my dad that's very popular. I wrote a song titled "When Jesus Wore a Rolex" on his cable TV show that Ray Stevens recorded. That was a hit, so I performed that quite a bit. And then I did, about 10 years ago, I did a tune titled "Frog Kissing" that Ray Stevens produced. Yeah. So I have been singing a little, but not enough to make the audiences get up and walk out.
Did you? Who recorded "Froggy Went A-Courtin'"? Was that you?
"Froggy Went A-Courtin' is an old traditional country song, and the only record I know of on that was by Tex Ritter.
Oh man!
Years and years ago, he did a Kitty album, and I believe he did that.
Well, maybe it was "Frog Kissing" then.
"Frog Kissing" was the one I did.
It's
a great song.
Do you think you had any influence on Mark Knopfler's guitar playing?
Oh yeah, changed the world. It really did, and I'm not bragging when I say that, but when I came along, everybody was fighting their guitar with a straight pick. Yeah. And now everybody plays with their fingers, and I think I had a lot to do that. I and Merle Travis. We had an awful lot to do that. Plus Segovia did too, but Segovia was not heard at all back in those days. I remember you couldn't even buy a classical guitar in this country outside of, you might find one at one music store in New York, or in Mexico City, of course you could find them, or in LA. But yeah, we changed that little way of playing guitar, and that'll be remembered someday, I think, by somebody.
Who plays guitar the Atkins style today? They all do, or they?
Almost everybody can play that style. And a little bit, yeah, they play with a straight pick and then play with their fingers a little melody and so on.
Where'd you learn to
use a thumb pick?
Where'd you learn to play that way?
I kind of made it up. That's the reason you're sitting here talking to me.
Calling the Atkins style?
At one time, I was very different and could walk into any radio station and get a job because I was different from any other guitar player in the world. And when you do that, maybe you're not the greatest, but I'm one of the best known players.
You sure are.
And so that's what happens when you do get lucky enough to come up with something different, which I did.
Do you feel you do your best work when you collaborate with somebody else?
I guess so most of the time, because especially if it's improvisation, because we kind of play off of each other and try to outplay each other, so it makes for a better record. Yeah, it works well. I think some of the best albums I've ever done were with Les Paul. We did a couple of great albums, I think, and funny albums. He's very funny. And then the ones I did with Jerry Reed back in the 70s were very good, and of course the one with Mark, I think, turned out well.
How did it feel to play with Les Paul and Arthur Fiedler, and you know, they're considered in our country music?
Well, Les Paul and my brother worked together back in the 30s and 40s. My brother was a singer, and before Mary Ford, Les Paul had a trio that included my brother and Ernie Newton, and they were on with Fred Waring twice a week. So I grew up listening to that. That's how I kind of got into playing single string guitar, was listening to my brother, and I got to hear Les Paul, and was greatly influenced by him, I might add. Arthur Fiedler, that was great fun. He was a great man, and he was so popular, and it was not easy to do, but I was younger and I pulled it off. We went in, and I guested with him a couple of days and played that music, all those arrangements, and then on Monday morning, I think it was Monday or Sunday, we'd move the tables and chairs out of the auditorium, move the band down there and make an album. And they'd make an album in about 2 hours. They'd just go through the tunes and that's it. I mean, you don't go back and correct any mistakes. So it was hard to do, but as I say, I rehearsed and I had my music to go by. I can read well enough, you know, to learn most any tune I want to learn. So I had the music there showing me when I come in, when I lay out and everything, and so it worked out all right. I was scared, of course, working with him and working with the orchestra, but I never thought of quitting because that's what I do. I'm a guitar player, and I was hired to do that, so I did it. And I prepared myself, and you know, if you practice enough and prepare yourself, you can usually pull it off. You
can do it and not feel frightened about it when you're doing it.
That's right.
You feel more confidence. How about Garrison Keillor of National Public Radio, Prairie Home Companion? He once said about you, Chet is one of the few guitarists I know who plays songs so that they don't need the lyrics, their vocalism and singing to his playing. Explain what that means, vocalism and singing to his playing.
Well, he said something about that I don't need lyrics when I'm playing the guitar because I make the guitar speak. I think that's what he was trying to say.
How do you do it?
Well,
that's just his interpretation?
That's his interpretation.
Okay.
I try to do that. I try to play the melody in about 40 different ways, and I try to play it with a lot of feeling to move people's hearts and move their emotions, and that's what music's all about.
You're doing a wonderful job.
And I try to move myself, you know, I try to get an emotional high out of it when I'm playing, and so sometimes it comes off and sometimes it doesn't, of course, but I always try to do that, play with a lot of feeling.
As both performer and RCA record company executive, you pioneered the once celebrated, later controversial Nashville sound. Matter of fact, you're the architect of the sound. What's celebrated, what was controversial, and what is the Nashville sound?
That's just a sales tag, I guess.
Is it?
Yeah, it's we had the same equipment as everyone else had in the world, but we had musicians who were, what's the word, I guess indigenous or whatever to that area. Maybe they sang and played with a southern accent or something. But I was just trying to keep my job and make hit records, and instead of saying it was made in Nashville, I guess they said it's the Nashville sound. You know, that's the sound that's indigenous to Nashville. What
was the instrumentation? Was the instrumentation different on any records?
Oh, we tried instrumentation all the time. When you make records, you got to surprise the friends and neighbors with every release because they like something different.
Sure.
So we try strings and voices and sometimes horns and the Floyd Kramer piano sound. Of course, we came up with that, which was part of the Nashville sound. The Anita Kerr Quartet, 2 girls and 2 boys that sang beautifully for background, and you know, we tried different things like that all the time. Harmonica, we tried the harmonica of Charlie McCoy. I think I used it the first time.
He's great.
Ever on. And Boots Randolph, the sax player. So it's just trying new things.
What years did this all take place? Do you remember what years? In the 60s, 70s?
50,
in the 50s and 60s?
58 and the 68 or somewhere in there. But I was doing an interview with some Germans once, and the Germans said, "I will show you the Nashville sound." The other guy asked him, "And you got some money out and rattle it?" So that is the Nashville. I would never say that, of course.
No. Has that sound changed over the years?
It keeps evolving and keeps changing because people keep demanding new song ideas and new sounds, but it stays basically the same too. Sometimes you'll hear some of the records like Key Graham Brown or somebody that sounds very rock and roll. A lot of the records are like the rock and roll, I think, of the 60s.
What do you think of that sound today?
Well, it sells records.
That's
why they're in the business. So, but you know that you have guys like Randy Travis and Garth Brooks and those guys who are pure country, and that keeps us right where we should be. That keeps us in the old mainstream country music, and that's nice.
Do you think country music's going in different directions, like it's more rocky and more traditional, or do you think it's, somebody said it's going to go in different angles, you know, a couple years later down the road? I don't know.
Oh, it'll keep changing, and nobody knows. But I think as long as you have people coming along like Garth Brooks and Clint Black and Randy Travis and those guys, I think it'll do all right. But when they get too far away from that, it might die. But I don't see that happening because the people are all making records to make a living, and they'll give the public, in some hook or crook, they'll give them what they want, and what they want usually is pure country music.
Do you think that sound changed in the 70s and early 80s? It was kind of not a sort of a city country sound?
Well, it changed, like Owen Bradley changed it, and I changed it, and I get a lot of blame for that.
Oh, do you?
Because people in some of the foreign countries don't like that. But those people don't buy records.
Yeah.
You have all the old people saying, "Why don't you make records like you used to make?" Well, you could make those, but they won't buy records anymore. So you gotta pander to the young buyer now, and it's become a visual business. They like to look up there. They like to see a young, handsome, sexy guy singing country music. That's what they're getting.
They're getting it now. A figure who long has transcended country music while simultaneously being hugely responsible for its rise to respectability. Record company executive, ambitious musician. Explain that to us.
Somebody else would have done it if I didn't, if Owen Bradley didn't. Yeah, all it was required was a good sideman like I was, I've been exposed to all kinds of music. My dad's a classical teacher, and I'd been into jazz and gospel and rhythm and blues and everything. So that's all it would have taken, and somebody would have done it if I hadn't, because I'm no genius, you know. I just gathered in some good musicians who were my friends, and I selected the wheat from the chaff, you know. We make records, mostly head arrangements, and we gather around the piano and work out a nice arrangement, and I'd say, "Okay, you do that, and you do this," and we'd make a record. Sometimes a hit, sometimes it wasn't. And because we were making so many records, and everyone else was making records the same way, we made a few that were hits.
How many? You recall? Well, you were responsible for a lot of entertainers.
A lot of money for the company. And Jim Reeves, all of his hits, and of course Elvis recorded there for a long time.
Yeah.
And, Hank Snow had a lot of big hits. Jerry Reed, the list goes, the Browns and Skeeter Davis, and the list goes on.
Not to mention Chet Atkins.
Yeah, the Hank Locklins. There's so many.
Who was Gary Burton?
Gary Burton is the world's greatest five player. I signed him up when he was about 15 years old, and we went up to the Newport Jazz Festival, which was closed because of the riot they had at Newport, the college kids, and I think he teaches at Berkeley now, and he's probably 50 years old, still the greatest vibe player around, and a nice guy. Yeah.
You've been introduced as the world's greatest guitar player. Who was the first person that introduced you that way?
That's not true. You know,
Not,
people do that, and I dreamed of that happening when I was a kid. Before I ever got in the business, you know, I had this burning ambition to be the world's greatest guitar player, but we know the truth about that. I will admit to being one of the best known because I've been around so very long. But the first guy, he said Chet Atkins and his educated guitar, he would say all the time. Lowell Blanchard, the guy that gave me my first job. And Ralph Emery calls me the godfather of the guitar.
Okay.
All this junk, but...
it's all true. You've been...
I love the guitar. I think better than anyone's ever come along, or as much. And I've practiced probably more. I never had a set regimen of practicing, but sometimes I play for 3 days. But I never had a set regimen of playing so many hours a day. I just play when I want to play.
You sing a song almost in every show about your father called "I Still Can't Say Goodbye." You wrote the song?
Wrote some of it.
And
it fits me very well. My dad was a music teacher, voice, piano teacher, and was very fond of him. And I guess the song would fit a lot of people, you know. Back when I was raised, all the dads wore hats, and he'd get his hat and put it on and look in the mirror and try to be like him.
How long ago did you write that song?
I've been doing that about 4 or 5 years. Some guys, and there's a guy in Ireland and a guy from Chicago, they were in Nashville and wrote that and gave it to Scotty Turner. And he brought it to me and said, "You should do this on your shows." He said, "Spotlight, get you an old hat." And say, I listened to it a month later or something. I thought, yeah, that's for me. And I put in some of the best lines, I think, some of the lines that fit me. And it's a very, very touching song. I get emotional every time I do it because it's so much like the way my dad was, and my feelings toward him are expressed so very well in that song.
You're a Hall of Famer, the youngest member there?
Yeah, they say I was the youngest person ever inducted.
How old were you?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I was probably 40, 39 or 40. I believe somewhere in there.
How about the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society?
Oh, that's a group of people that appreciate the way I play, and they play with a thumb and fingers, and they come in from all over the world. They're going to have that in
July?
In October and August. And there's 40 people coming in from France, and a lot of people from England, and all over the United States, and most of them play like I play. And Earl Clue comes in, and he's a great player too, and sells more records than anybody probably. And Nato Lima, the Los Indios Tampajaris, they're coming in and entertain, and it's great fun for guitar players, because you can learn so much, learn so many licks, and they have workshops. And
you're there?
And they guys come in and sell their handmade guitars. I come in for a day and hang around and play.
You jam with the guys?
Some, yeah.
Good. Did you really play fiddle for the Carter family in Knoxville in 1943?
Oh, a little bit now and then.
Do you?
Played guitar mostly with them, but fiddle once in a while. In fact, I'm going to play it right now. I'm going to take off my microphone and go.
All right. Let me just close the show by saying it's been a pleasure having you on my show. Boy, I'll tell you, Chet Atkins, of all people, I can't believe it.
Well, thank you.
World-renowned guitar player, guitarist.